For half a month, bodies dangled from the trails, winding up Barrow Mountains, foolhardy challengers who had thrown their lives away. The stronghold's treasury now groaned under nearly 2,000 taels of silver. A half storeroom of captured blades stood heaped in shadow. A voice rang from the earthen rampart, sharp with command. "Dig a pitfall here too. Yes, right in front of my door. Think I'll step in it myself. Put another one behind the house." The camp churned with manic intent. Not a soul practiced fist or blade. Every hand laid snares. Night raiders' heads crowned the flagpoles. The band, its stole glances at their boss with dread, tinged reverence. This one did not plunder or pillage. But when he took ahead, his stare never wavered. The demonic Kai rolling off him could buckle a man's knees at 100 paces. Kaelan stood on the rampart, arms folded. His gaze swept the desolate trail beyond. Government troops were marching. Bannon would soon be healed. These traps were not merely for the vermin that crept in the dark. They were a gift, a grand gift for certain other parties. A cautious step scuffed the dirt. Oren crept up, his head low. "Boss, it's New Year's Eve. The brothers are hoping for a word from you." A grin twisted Kaelan's mouth. "I'm not your wife. You ask me about holidays." Oren's throat bobbed. He said nothing. Kaelan's face split into a wider grin. "Go into town, buy wine and meat. Let the brothers drink their fill tonight. Take the silver from the chest and be quick about it." Oren turned beaming. Kaelan watched him go. A flicker of derision passed through his eyes, then vanished. Bannon's man, he played the part well, working doubly hard to earn trust. For now, he could be used. The pre-festival clamor of the camp soured Kaelan's stomach. He turned, listless, and strode toward his quarters. Better to just cultivate. His foot crossed the threshold. He froze dead on the door frame. A figure in crimson robes leaned against the window, idly leafing through the sanguine cult scriptures. The setting sun bled through the battered lattice, spilling a thin, blood-hued luminescence over the red silk, so vivid it stung the eye. Over her lower abdomen, the fabric lay darker, stiff with dried blood. The woman looked up, a carefree smile touched her lips. Outside, the evening glow dimmed, only her brows and eyes blazed with startling clarity. Kaelan's pupils shrank, his right hand darted to the saber hilt, then he saw the pallor of her lips. He drew a deep breath, released the hilt. The wariness in his gaze melted into a thread of faint gentleness. She closed the volume, her tone light as mist. "Fortress Lord Zhao, your howl shakes the mountains, your might overawes the Barrow Mountains. Why the sigh? The sight of your back just now was nothing like the fierce bravado you show the world." His voice came out rough. "Miss Eryndra, what brings you here?" She slanted him a sidelong glance, wounded, seeking refuge with an acquaintance. "Is that so strange? Did you truly think I'd come to slay demons? You act bold, but your mind spins too many threads. You lack a clean straightforwardness." Kaelan said nothing. He crossed to a cabinet, swift and silent. He retrieved a porcelain bottle and a roll of snow-white bandages. Eryndra watched the arc of his spine. Her fingertip tapped soundlessly against the windowsill. In the quiet chamber, only the rustle of cloth and the fading wind outside remained. He set the supplies on the small table by the window, his voice low. "Takes one to know one." A heroine who truly lets a stranger sit behind her without a trace of caution would hardly live to see the hidden dragon rise from the abyss. She tilted her head, gave him a look. "So back then, when you hadn't yet grasped all this, would you count as a naive youth?" His fingers faltered on the tabletop. He lifted his eyes. The sunset light fell full on his face. "I would." His voice roughened. Her gaze settled on the bandages. A stillness hung for a breath. Then the you of today. Can I still trust him? Kaelan retreated 2 steps. Light and dust hung between them. "I'd recommend you don't trust me. The whole stronghold knows. Right now, we've got everything we need, except a wife for the fortress lord." She let that pass. She picked up the wound salve. "I can dress it myself, thank you." Her eyes lifted, directing him toward the door. Kaelan turned and strode out. The wind of his robes scattered twilight across the ground. Not once looking back, he roared, so loud the roof tiles rattled. "No need to set traps here. Move farther off to dig. Over there, on the parade ground where we drill the troops, nobody would ever guess there'd be a pitfall even in a place like that. Finish up and call it a day. Tonight, drink free." The wooden door slammed shut. She carried her own wound salves. Their quality likely matched those of North Mang Stronghold, yet she had not touched her medicine packet. What she lacked was not a remedy. It was a corner where she could lower every guard. Inside her, Oren's sword kai raged through her meridians like shattered ice-scraping marrow. She did not lean at the window from languid frailty, her true kai marshaled to suppress that rampaging strand of sword intent. If she relaxed even slightly, her organs might grind to dust. She did not guard against Oren. In the long, street battle, she had read only candor in his eyes. What she feared were the eyes that watched from the shadows, those who knew Crimson Stupa Eryndra lay grievously wounded, exhausted. A single cold arrow, one treacherous blow. Enough to claim her life. She needed someone she could trust to stand guard beyond the door. The Kaelan of today carried that weight. A voice carried through the door. Done. She bit tight the final knot on the bandage. Her garment fell shut, covering the wrapped wound. She drew a slow breath. Heat crept from her cheeks, past her ears. She steadied her voice. Done. Kaelan pushed open the door. His gaze flicked to her face. He frowned. Your injury feels deeper than external wounds. Your breath is shallow. Your Kai obstructed. Did your internal organs suffer a shock as well? She smiled, her lips bloodless. They did. At this level, purely external wounds are rare, but it's not serious. I just need a few days of undisturbed rest to recover. His face darkened. In these Barrow Mountains, even I can swagger about unhindered. Who could wound you like this? Wouldn't that mean your stronghold could be wiped out in the blink of an eye? Her voice came dry. This stronghold of yours, if someone truly took it seriously, it could indeed be wiped out in the blink of an eye. Kaelan's jaw tightened. Tell me who it was. Third on the hidden dragon list, Oren of the Kiwi family of Clear River. His brows knit. Third on the hidden dragon list, the one you supplanted. Yes. So he didn't accept it. He chased you all the way from Clear River to the Barrow Mountains to pick a fight. Yes. Kaelan raised his eyes to the sky. The Chronicle of Chaos showed no movement. His gaze sank into thought. The list hasn't changed. That means even though you're hurt, he's hurt worse. Isn't that right? Eryndra, having heard 3 yesies in a row, let out a laugh. What are you doing? Proving you're no crude brute. His expression blanked. I was just thinking whether I should strike while he's weak and take his life, to eliminate a future threat. She sighed, a glint of earnestness in her eyes. Even wounded, he's no easy target. Besides, his younger sister is by his side protecting him, nor would I wish for that. He challenged me openly on the long street, in the way of a martial artist. How could I gather men to harass him afterward? A muscle in Kaelan's jaw ticked. You hid here, not because you're worried he'll cause trouble. He's not the one I'm worried about. That man is open and honorable, with his own sense of bearing. She stopped short. Oh, what is that look on your face? Kaelan's jaw clenched tight enough to crack stone. His face hardened like the rock of Barrow Mountains. He spat, stiff and cold, nothing. A noble heir from an illustrious clan, with personal bearing. The grace of a hidden dragon, mutual admiration, while we mountain band, it's only know how to kick a man when he's down. She gazed at him with a peculiar expression. For a long moment, silence. Then she murmured, but I sought refuge with you, not him. His face flickered. The jealousy felt utterly baseless. Eryndra wasn't his woman. That spirit of martial camaraderie, the exhilaration of crossing blades, wasn't that what he loved most about the martial world. Saving face, he clumsily changed the subject. Have you eaten? At the 8th layer of Profound Gate, you still haven't learned to fast, have you? She clasped her fist in salute. No, I am indeed hungry. Sorry to trouble you, Chief Zhao. Kaelan genuinely liked her straightforwardness, yet his words twisted of their own accord. Meeting again in the martial world, and you call me Chief Zhao. A sly smile surfaced in her eyes. Is this the martial world, or is it your den? He paused, then broke into a helpless laugh. This girl, turning his own words against him, she wasn't just the gallant swordswoman after all. True, and younger than him, too. They just went to the city to buy supplies. The good stuff hasn't arrived yet. Let me check what's left from lunch and bring you some. He strode out, but wheeled at the door, his voice snapping fierce. Don't go wandering. The stronghold is riddled with traps now. Without a guide, you'll tumble straight into them. Eryndra watched his back vanish through the doorway and let out a long, slow breath. Whether heaven's way exists or not, I walk my own path. Her chosen path was right. This man held to a way in his heart, set apart from common bandits. What should she call him? How would she know? She braced her palms on the table and pushed upright. Instantly, the sword Kai in her organs twisted like shards of metal grinding past each other and tore a muffled groan from her throat. Cold sweat purled on her forehead. The injury was manageable, but she could not force herself further. She had yet to master fasting, so certain needs could not be ignored. Even a heroine had to relieve herself. Searching for a chamber pot in his room, that she simply could not stomach, she would slip into the mountains. A quick trip. She drew a light breath and vaulted over the sill, one hand bracing. Her robes whispered in the night wind, a bird folding its wings. The instant her feet met ground, the sensation gave way to nothing. A scream shrieked through her mind. No. Alarms howled. Instinct screamed to summon Kai and leap, but in that splinter of a moment, the sword Kai in her abdomen spasmed, and ice all plunging into her dantian, scattering every wisp of strength. She plummeted. Thud she slammed onto packed earth, dust boiling up, the damp reek of soil surging around her. The pit was shallow, but the bottom spread wide. She peered up. A ragged hole framed a scrap of night sky, a few loose blades of grass drifting down. Eryndra fought to rise, but the berserk sword Kai rampaged through her meridians like 1,000 steel needles. Not a shred of true Kai could she gather. She ground her teeth, and for the first time felt the raw, blistering urge to curse. Kaelan, what in the hells was wrong with him? Digging a pit trap flush against his own courtyard wall, did he not fear tumbling into it himself during training? A shout punched through the dark. Someone's there. Back of boss's courtyard. Go check. A third voice snarled, damn fool, here to die. Then a pause, a shift in tone. Wait, that direction looks like they came from boss's rooms. A flurry of boots closed in from all sides. Torchlight swayed into wavering orange halos around the hole, a ring of rugged faces leering down. Eryndra threw up a hand to shield her face. A rough mutter cut the air, a woman, another voice lower waited with implication. If from boss's room, out of the way, heavy footfalls shook the earth. Kaelan shoved aside the nearest ruffian and planted himself at the rim, his voice crashing down like a boulder. What are you looking at? I've got a fortress wife hidden in my room. Anything strange about that? Get lost, all of you. Fortress wife, those two words slammed into the pit, and Eryndra's nails nearly carved furrows into her own cheeks. The bandit swapped glances. One grumbled, he's got a history used to hide that Lyle, now he's hiding a woman. Another cupped his hands and hollered down into the darkness. Elder, sister-in-law. Boss is good at everything. Just likes things buttoned up tight, no fun at all. It's the new year, and you're here anyway, so come out to the bonfire feast later and have some fun with us. Elder sister-in-law, fun, squatting in the pit, Eryndra prayed for the ground to swallow her whole. She was far too famous. In some towns, they peddled her portrait. Even a lout like Oren had picked her out from a distance. If word leaked crimson, stupa Eryndra turned fortress wife in the den of North Mang Stronghold. A voice came from above, tight with fury. I told you not to wander. The torches had been driven back. Kaelan crouched at the edge, a hand reaching down. If this were a real bandit stronghold, how would you want to die? Lucky this pit is freshly dug. The bottom hasn't been lined with spikes yet. Otherwise, the second, ranked hidden dragon Eryndra dying here would crash chronicle of chaos. Eryndra glared up. In the guttering torchlight, she caught the dark scowl chiseled onto his face irritation. Yes, but beneath it, a shadow of lingering fear. She said nothing. She simply reached up and clasped his hand, his palm scorched like a brand. His fingers clamped like iron pincers, and then a surge of strength erupted from his whole arm and hoisted her into the air. Weightless, the pit's muddy stench dropped away. The next moment, Kaelan sidestepped, half, shielding her as she found her footing, a motion as smooth as 1,000 repetitions. Eryndra steadied herself, her teeth grinding together. The sword Kai still twisted inside her, but shame and fury blazed hotter. Other band, it dins don't scatter pits across the ground. And explain this, what do you mean by fortress wife? Kaelan released her hand, glaring back, irritation flaring in his voice. What else should I have said? That my room's been burgled. Boys sees this reckless woman. Eryndra's jaw worked, but no words came. Kaelan stepped closer, his tone dropping to a seethe. My dear Eryndra, sister, you're injured and defenseless. Those brutes, each with a spear, they'd skewer you by stabbing blind into that hole. If I didn't name you one of ours, what was I supposed to say? She opened her mouth, no rebuttal formed. One of ours, a woman, a man and a woman, alone late at night. Just friends, who would swallow that? It would only draw a sly, knowing oh, and the fortress wife title would cling even tighter. Eryndra's stare went hollow. I didn't expect the sword Kai to rampage just then. When I snuck in earlier, it was fine. It was over. Her reputation lay buried in this wretched stronghold. Kaelan shot her a sidelong glance. The lofty, transcendent swordswoman in his mind cracked apart, the image shattering entirely. Yet, strangely, the ruin did not feel like loss. Rather, it felt endearing. Come on, don't look like that. He pressed a cup of warm water into her hands and dropped onto the bench opposite. Anyway, no one here knows you're Eryndra. Skip the bonfire feast, lie low a few days, heal, then leave. No one will recognize you. At worst, they'll think I hauled some brothel girl back from the city for a few days' play. Eryndra lifted her eyes, face empty as a wiped slate. Brothel, play, drop dead. Kaelan's expression twisted between a laugh and a cry, not even hiding. Then what do you want, my dear Eryndra, good sister? The way he repeated sister, dripped with sly teasing. Eryndra forced each syllable through clenched teeth. Find me some clothes from the stronghold. I'll disguise myself and walk out openly to drink and eat. Plenty of women share my face. Who's to say I'm Eryndra? My name is Lin Hong. You. Kaelan stared at her and burst out laughing, as if Lyle held any weight at all. He rose and clapped her shoulder, changing clothes and putting on makeup. That's so you can move freely in your daily life. Go out when you want. Hit whoever needs hitting. No need to skulk in hiding. That's not the Eryndra I hold in my heart. As for wine, you're wounded. Don't push yourself. Eryndra watched his profile, the cast of her own features flickering, the Eryndra he holds in his heart. He had already shifted to the foot of the bed, yanking open chests and cabinets. A moment later, a set of clothes sailed toward her, carrying a faint, clean scent from the folds. Someone left these behind when she went on her way, roughly your size. Rest, I'll step out. You, the fortress lord skipping the New Year's revels to hole up indoors playing with a woman. That looks bad. Kaelan strode out the door. Playing with a woman, my foot. Eryndra pinched the bridge of her nose, but her gaze snared on that faint, lingering fragrance clinging to the clothes in her arms. Whose clothes were these? A crude mountain bandit. He truly had fooled around with some woman here. She dragged in a deep breath, shoved the distracting thoughts down, and flicked a swift glance toward the corner of the room. First relieve herself. The need had grown unbearable. Night pressed down with its full, heavy weight. Bonfires blazed up throughout the mountain stronghold, tongues of flame licking at the dark sky. Thick smoke rolled through the valley, clotted with the reek of charred meat and cheap, raw liquor. 300 or 400 souls gathered in one sprawling space, raucous shouts, coarse curses, the sheer noise making the cliff walls buzz in echo. The crisp clink of wine bowls wove through the din, the clamor seething like boiling oil into a pan of water. At the field's edge, a great banner snapped in the wind, its surface flickering in and out of the firelight. 4 huge characters, uphold heaven's way, were dyed a brutal scarlet by the blaze, as if cast from fresh, dripping blood. Eryndra stood on a vantage point, robes wrapped close around her. The mountain breeze tugged at the hem. Flame light danced in her eyes as she stared down at that fierce, wild banner. A faint curl lifted one corner of her lips. Uphold heaven's way. Countless bandits had used those 4 words as a fig leaf, but he didn't seem intent on upholding anyone's way but his own. Her gaze combed through the chaos below and soon locked onto a single figure. Kaelan wove through the crowd, a large jug of wine slung in his grip. The firelight carved every sharp line of his face into stark relief. He tilted his head back and drank deep, the wine sliding down his jaw and soaking his lapel. He paid it no mind. He slapped a bandit beside him on the shoulder, his voice booming skyward. Only a few cups and you're cowering. Are you a man or not? Drink a martial tournament with drinking stakes. Fine, split into groups. I'm putting up the prize money. Winners take cash. Losers pour it down your throats for me. What do you call me? Great king, don't make me laugh, big boss. You'd do better calling me supreme treasure. When will I break through the profound gate, second stage? I don't know. Who the hell cares? Then Eryndra heard a voice rise above the din, a voice that spoke her name. Boss, that Eryndra who passed through our territory before, could she still be near? If a powerhouse like her came to raid the fortress. Kaelan waved a dismissive hand. No need to panic. I'll step in if it happens. The firelight danced, laughter boomed across the stronghold, a voice, thick with drink, cut through the clamor. Boss, that woman you've hidden in your quarters. Another man leaned closer, his grin sloppy. The more I look, the more she resembles Eryndra. Kaelan's eyes narrowed. He set down his cup with a deliberate click. How many cups did you knock back to get this plastered? His tone scraped with scoff. If it really were Eryndra in my room, would I be standing here shooting the breeze with you lot? I'd have gone in long ago. A third bandit snickered into his sleeve. Boss, I didn't mean she is Eryndra. Just looks a bit like her. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Did you pick your woman by searching for someone with that face? What, is there a problem? A chorus of hoots erupted. So boss has this kink, obviously. A fatter man shoved his way forward, eager to flatter. With that face of Eryndra's, ask the entire martial world, who wouldn't want to pin her to the bed. Kaelan's laughter hitched. Just for an instant, then he forced out a roar. Ha ha ha, well said. The crude men sensed nothing. They kept egging him on. I think boss is a match for Eryndra too. Sooner or later he'll bag the real one. All right, drink up. Stop dreaming big. Kaelan raised his jug and took a fierce gulp. The wine went down the wrong pipe. He coughed twice, his face flushed crimson. Asterisk those bastards. Asterisk the thought sliced through the haze. Asterisk, do they not realize Eryndra can hear every word? Asterisk, with the senses of a profound gate 8th stage cultivator, not a single whisper would miss her ears. And yet someone still recklessly leaned in. Boss, if you go after Eryndra, then what about Saintess Zeal? Shit. Kaelan slammed the jug onto the table. A quicker-witted bandit instantly dragged the clueless fool away, offering an apologetic smile. Boss, you should cut back too. Your wife is still waiting in the room. His eyes darted toward the darkened quarters. Eryndra, the Saintess. We were all just horsing around. Don't take it to heart. Roaring laughter broke out around them. Kaelan rose awkwardly. He headed back without a backward glance. Just as he neared the dwelling, he spotted her. The figure in red, standing outside the door. Eryndra looked down at him from her vantage point. Shame and irritation churned in her beautiful eyes. Yet the corner of her mouth carried a faint, enigmatic curve. The distant firelight leaped in her pupils, casting her face in shifting light and shadow. Kaelan's steps froze. A chill ran down his back. Her sword kai was no joke. If he truly angered her, he couldn't withstand even one exchange. Yet Eryndra did not ask the lethal question. Asterisk, now that the person is in your room, just how do you plan to play? Asterisk, she regarded him for a moment. Then she abruptly laughed. Her voice sounded slightly distant against the backdrop of noise behind her. This pond is too shallow. Eryndra's gaze swept the fortress walls. I've looked across the entire fortress, and you are the only one at the profound gate 1st stage. You clearly have a mind full of strategy and no small ambition. Why are you content to wallow here? She paused, her tone growing sharper. Besides, your path and the demon sect's path run diametrically opposed. How can you bear to stay in a place like this? Kaelan's shoulders dropped. A long breath slipped from his chest. Asterisk, this asterisk Eryndra. Calm, incisive, seeing through illusion in a single glance. This was the woman who stood at the peak of the martial world in his heart. He pulled himself together and answered seriously. In the short term, this place suits me perfectly. His voice steadied. There are some minor characters at the 1st and 2nd stage in the surrounding region, ideal practice partners. With my current paltry skills, if I blindly rushed into the Jiang, who I wouldn't even know whose blade I'd run into, he allowed a trace of wry amusement to enter his smile. As for the demon sect, Kaelan let the silence hang, then continued. All along, only a few worthless fish and rotten shrimp have come to stir up trouble. No true demonic expert has issued a challenge. Not a single bounty hunter has knocked on the door. His eyes met hers, unblinking. Why? Because I'm a man of the blood god cult. Not everyone dares to provoke the blood god cult. Eryndra slowly nodded. Indeed. Training in the martial path for less than 2 months, yet achieving this level, it was already extraordinary. Perhaps it was his overwhelming presence that made people feel in a haze, as if he were a long, established name. She frowned slightly and added, your luck is strange too. Now, with the government offering a bounty and the orthodox sects disowning you, if you rashly break from the demon sect, they will hunt you as well. In the end, you'd have nowhere to go. Kaelan was silent for a spell, then he lifted his head and met her gaze. Eryndra was looking at him too. The distant bonfires and clamor suddenly seemed to recede to the edge of the sky. Only moonlight lay silently between the two of them, illuminating each other's eyes with startling clarity. He spoke. His voice was lower than a moment ago, yet laced with an intense gravity. You, Eryndra, and not sister, and not Lady You, her full name. Teach me the martial path. Eryndra saw the firelight in the depths of his eyes, a spark that had been pressed deep but never quenched by the cheap liquor of these mountain band. She suddenly smiled, not the earlier shame-filled teeth, gritted smile, a smile that smoothed her brows and lit her eyes in a way even she did not fully realize. All right. Just one word. The distant bedlam still raged. The night wind still cut sharp and cold. The banner of Uphold Heaven's Way still heaved like waves in the firelight. Yet between the two of them, it felt as though something had settled into place. Silence reigned, leaving only the moon's radiance. The two returned indoors. Kaelan fetched more wine and meat. Outside the window, moonlight lay like frost. Inside, the brazier crackled and warm light flickered. He watched Eryndra across from him, wipe the wine stain from her lips. That hollow feeling of having no one to guide him finally settled into something solid. For 2 months, he'd been groping in the dark like a blind man. Whether his saber work had veered off course, whether his inner breath had branched down the wrong meridian, all of it was guesswork. Now what had practically fallen into his lap was a top-tier expert who could suppress even Instructor Sun, a sect leader, in combat. This was a prize beyond his wildest hopes. Eryndra, having eaten and drunk her fill, narrowed her eyes in contentment, and suddenly spoke. I've watched your fights. She let the words hang, more than one. Kaelan blinked. A dry laugh escaped him. Then you already know what I'm missing, a real saber art. Your foundation is remarkably solid. Eryndra's voice remained even. Your eye reaches, and the blade follows. Hard and soft shift at your whim. As she spoke, she pulled a traveling pouch from under the table and casually tossed a few manuals his way. The Blood Fiend saber art is of no low grade. These will serve you as whetstones from other mountains. Her finger tapped the cover of one manual. For now, your main cultivation should remain Trarubaz Dinifdulbzuz. Kaelan caught them, but his gaze remained fixed on her. Eryndra understood his doubts. She elaborated. The bloodshed art is not a lesser substitute for the blood god art. Her tone dipped, turning instructive. It is a shortcut for specializing in blood and Kai. Among external arts, its mastery over blood and Kai can be said to have reached the peak. Then her voice dropped, but a pause, the fire popped. This art has 3 flaws. She ticked them off on her fingers. It clouds the mind, the cultivation is agonizing, and Eryndra's eyes met his, sharp as a blade. The more you kill, the thicker your baleful aura grows. The power it feeds back is stronger, but it also makes it easier for you to become a demon consumed by slaughter. Kaelan's eyes widened. What madness is this? 3 flaws at once. Am I forging a demon's grimoire here, as long as you know? Eryndra ignored his strange phrasing and said gravely, now that you've cultivated it, you must keep this in mind. Kaelan fell silent. Firelight flickered unsteadily across his face. Eryndra studied him for a long moment. Then she suddenly spoke in a soft voice. I'll teach you 3 aspects: inner breath guidance, the subtleties of saber technique, and adaptability in the face of an opponent. We start with breathing exercises. Her voice hardened, brooking no argument. Sit properly. Kaelan obeyed and sat cross-legged, spine straight. Eryndra rose and bent down. Her black hair cascaded like a waterfall, spilling suddenly forward. The ends brushed across Kaelan's cheek. A wisp of subtle fragrance drifted past, like a night wind threading through a forest. Kaelan's breath hitched. In the next instant, a warm, slender hand pressed through the fabric of his clothes onto his lower abdomen. The heel of her palm rested against his dantian. Heat seeped through flesh and muscle. Threads of her true Kai seeped down like cool, fine wires. With precise accuracy, she traced his meridians, hooked the scattered, chaotic inner breath, and guided it into converging currents. External breath and internal breath must blend into one. Eryndra's voice was forcefully steady. You're too tense. Relax. In the crackling shower of sparks from the brazier, a faint flush crept up the base of her ears. Kaelan's chest heaved. His rigid muscles gradually, inch by inch, unknotted. The turbulent energy within him finally grew docile, following the guidance of that hand like streams, returning to a deep pool. Eryndra's hand pressed against his abdomen. Her fingertips felt cool against his skin. Pull in your stomach, breathe deep. Her voice was subdued. Her breath ghosted past the curve of Kaelan's ear. Kaelan held his breath. His abdominal muscles tensed and then loosened beneath her palm. The ends of her hair grazed his cheek again. The itch burrowed from his skin into the very marrow of his bones. His Adam's apple bobbed. I told you to breathe deep. Eryndra's face was expressionless. Her voice squeezed from between her teeth. How is your breathing this scattered and ragged? She let the question hang, then added, each word a needle. Could it be that with Eryndra in your room, you're plotting what games to play? Kaelan's neck flushed scarlet. Honestly, I never thought. His words came out in a rush. That was just trash talk with the brothers in the stronghold. He swallowed hard, but could you stop groping me? It's just a deep, breathing abdominal exercise. I know how to do it. Eryndra's hand froze. Grope, who was groping him, blood. Hued Kai nearly burst from her fingertips. She grit her teeth. The air around them seemed to tighten. I was waiting for you to inhale the external breath so I could guide your dantian. Her voice was ice and iron. Without someone experienced watching over you, how can you even train this? Kaelan's head drooped, then grope away. Eryndra's fury clamped her chest tight. With sudden force, she drove her knuckles half an inch into his gut. Deep breath, focus, calm. A voice shattered the moment. Boss, boss. The door plank crashed against the stone wall. A muffled drum thud. A winter gust, thick with night dew, howled into the chamber. Brazier flames sank low, then shot upward in a violent dance, ripping the shadows into twisted, writhing shapes. A bandit stumbled in, gulping air. Outside, his eyes bulged. He saw Eryndra bent forward, her hand pressed low against Kaelan's abdomen. Eryndra turned her head toward him, slow as a blade unsheathing, then looked down at her own hand just as slowly. The open door spewed cold wind, whipping her robes with a snapping sound. Her long hair plastered to her cheeks like scorched silk. Kaelan's face hardened to stone. What is it? A trap on Mount Hinder triggered, not a beast. Someone's on the mountain. Kaelan's eyes transformed in a heartbeat, the drunken haze evaporated, his pupils shrank to needle points. A malevolent spike shot up his spine, ice, water cold drenching his skull. His shoulder and back muscles bunched, coiled tight. He surged upright, the chair screeching as his knees knocked it back, its legs gouging 2 pale furrows in the ram, dearth floor. You did well? His voice clipped each word short, no emotion wasted, 2 paces, head down, mind racing. Everyone drank too deep tonight, the perfect window for a night raid, I was a fool. He raised his eyes to Eryndra. Moon, stay hidden in the house, do not set foot outside, I'll scout ahead and bring men. Eryndra's lips twitched, she turned her head away, silent. Kaelan strode over the threshold, the night wind slamming his lapels back. Behind him, the bandit's lowered voice carried clear, Boss, the lady boss really does favor Eryndra. So boss has been pining for her all this time. Mind your own damn tongue. Kaelan's reply shredded on the wind. Post sentries. Keep the lady boss from any fright. Rest easy, our brothers are solid. If a single hair on her head stirs, we'll twist our skulls off for your chamber pot. Less bragging, move. Footsteps fled into the night. Alone in the room, Eryndra felt a ghost of a laugh rise, whose reputation truly tattered here. No one knew she was the real Eryndra, yet now, word of Kaelan's secret longing for Eryndra would spread. Her smile froze dead. A whisper, thin pressure wave bled through the southwest window lattice. No night wind, this was the quiver of a stifled breath. She flipped her wrist. Blade edge scraped scabbard throat, a sharp metallic ring, sparks kissing the air. 3 feet of gleaming steel leaped to her palm, tip angled earthward, its sword intent exhaling to shear the brazier flames by a third. Tree shadows convulsed on the window paper, bleached bone, white in the reflected blade glare. Which lofty expert stalks the darkness? Show yourself. A muffled voice rode from the tree branch outside, its inner strength audibly feeble. It's me. Oren, her pupils constricted to specks. Disaster, now someone truly knew Eryndra dwelt here. Her tone quaked with rage. Your wounds run deeper than mine. Why lurk around the stronghold at this hour? Since when does the Kiwi family stoop to hunting lowly fugitives? A cough came, breath splintered. I heard the lady boss of North Mang was quite fair, her face a mirror of Eryndra's. Kaelan's taste, it seems unease crept in. I feared you might have fallen to bandits after a lost fight. I could not rest, so I came to see. His words paused, then muffled further. My timing, it seems, is wretched. Eryndra's face blackened like a pot's scorched bottom. When did you arrive? Just now, the moment you draped yourself over him and your palm began its descent. Oren's tone was deliberate, languid. A woman's spiritual sense in such moments truly vanishes. Yet the instant he departed, your awareness flared keen enough to catch me before I stirred. Eryndra's sword tip thrust high. A sword Kai howl tore the air. Window paper split with a shriek, a gash spanning yards. She burst through in a storm of splintered wood, her blade a ribbon of silk, lunging for the treetops. Oren, meet death. 2 long swords clashed under the moon, a high, pitched ting, sparks scattered, waking the roosting birds from the grove. Leaves and twigs rained, pulverized by crisscrossing sword kai. Before the clean ring faded, both grunted together, their wounded inner reserves churned, and they reeled apart. Oren swept backward, toes tapping branch to branch, snapping 3 dead limbs in a row. Each step wrung a ragged rasp. I came with goodwill, stumbling upon your leisure. Must you pursue so fiercely? You still dare speak? Sword light flared anew, chasing him deep into the forest shadows. The night wind swept through, leaving only slashed, trembling branches beneath the moon. When Kaelan returned, the door hung ajar, the shattered window lattice strewn across the floor. Eryndra stood amid the splintered wreckage, blade sheathed, chest heaving. Fury's flush burned from her cheeks to the tips of her ears, a vivid crimson, as if drenched in molten cinnabar. He glanced outside. Moonlight revealed a staggering silhouette tumbling into the distant tree line, unsteady gait, listing form, the last hem of a robe swallowed by darkness, leaving only the faint SWI of branches. Kaelan folded his hands into his sleeves, his gaze traveling from Eryndra's face to the woods. So, a misunderstanding, he bore no ill will. Eryndra's voice cut in, flat as a blade. You have a spy in your stronghold. Kaelan paused, then nodded. Yes, you triggered that trap at dusk. By midnight, Oren learned of it in the city. Loose tongues wag. You know the culprit. Need a hand dealing with him. Not yet. He hesitated. Though if you crave release, we can act now. If you have a plan, then wait. Her tone leveled. It was a misunderstanding. Let it go. Sit. I'll guide your breath. Kaelan blinked. You still intend to? What? She glanced at him. Then a sudden smile broke. Did you think I would sever all ties? This matter holds no fault of yours. Why would I turn my anger upon you? Kaelan pressed his lips tight and spoke no more. He settled still, composing himself. Eryndra laid her palm upon his lower abdomen. This time, the press was seamless, and her true Kai flowed with it. A warmth like a spring-fed stream passed from her palm into his dantian. No searing heat, but an impossibly fine and gentle current, seeping silent through his meridians. It met the external breath Kaelan drew, twin streams intertwining, spiraling, creek merging with river. She felt the thin muscle beneath her hand tense for a fleeting heartbeat, then slowly unknot. His breathing shifted from ragged to long and steady, his chests rise and fall attuning to the Kai's pulse. Mark this sensation, she murmured, from now on, follow 3 long and 2 short, gradually attune. Once it becomes instinct, you need not force it. Understood. I will transmit the mental cultivation formula, engrave it. Strands of her hair brushed his cheek again, bearing a subtle, elusive aroma. This time, no stray thought stirred within him. The formula arrived, crisp word by word, as if chiseled into stone. He shut his eyes, sank his awareness, and poured all intent into the ceaseless circuit of Kai within. Gradually, he slipped into meditative absorption. At last, Eryndra withdrew her hand. She sat cross-legged beside him, eyes closed, cycling her own cultivation, her moon-white robes still in the night air. Time dissolved unnoticed. Kaelan's eyes snapped open. In the darkness, lightning seemed to streak across his pupils, a white glare blooming and dying in an instant. The dim room lit as though a silent bolt had struck. For that fleeting flash, even dust motes, drifting by the wall, stood crystalline. Lightning born of stillness. The second tier of the profound gate. In the same breath, Eryndra opened her eyes. She gazed at Kaelan, and undisguised astonishment flickered there. This was to be your first lesson, meant only for familiarization, she said, a slight smile touching her lips. But the moment you sensed the opportunity to break through, you surged without a shred of hesitation. Such decisive momentum, truly like Kaelan's floods, unstoppable. Kaelan exhaled slowly, a turbid stream of Kai arcing from his mouth like a white arrow. You flatter me. Eryndra's brow furrowed, a shadow crossing her features. Your cultivation art. It terrifies me. A mere second-tier profound gate, and already you manifest lightning in stillness. I've never encountered an art so domineering. Yet I sense no distinct trait, only purity, vastness, and unbroken flow. What divine art is this? Kaelan could only mumble in response. I don't even know what art it is. It has no breathing method or mental formula. I've been practicing blindly. Eryndra extended her palm. Give me your hand. I'll probe it. Kaelan obediently offered his own. Her inner sense pierced just a hair's breadth inside, and her face went still. Shock layered upon shock, freezing her features into a mask of disbelief. Within Kaelan's body, his meridians stretched like carved riverbeds, and his dantian spread as a vast marsh. Inside the reservoir of his newly broken, through second tier, true Kai surged not as formless sensation, but as a dense, roiling white fog. It coiled and swirled, visible to her inner eye, as heavy as vaporized quicksilver, an ocean of clouds compressed to its absolute limit, rolling ponderously through his narrow channels. For anyone else at this cultivation stage, true Kai was thin to the point of nothingness, but for him, the reservoir brimmed with condensed ice. Eryndra pulled her hand back, her voice laced with rare incredulity. Your dantian and meridians are reservoirs fitting for the second tier. The capacity is normal. But this quality, it's beyond absurd. She paused, as if measuring her words. Others pool water, you pool ice. For the same reservoir, what you can mobilize equates to several times another's volume. Kaelan stroked his chin. So, does that mean the problem of me starting martial, training too late, has been solved by this art? Eryndra shook her head. The malleability of youth allows a child's dantian and meridians to expand slowly during cultivation. Your framework is already set. Your meridians are only this wide, they cannot withstand an overly violent eruption of true Kai. Your dantian is only this large. Even if you break through 9 tiers of the heavenly gates, its total capacity remains limited. Unless you encounter a special karmic windfall, your future achievements may be capped. Kaelan fell silent for a moment, then a soft chuckle escaped him. I see, thank you for explaining. Eryndra tilted her head, a puzzled glint in her eye. How can you be so carefree about it? Kaelan's voice carried an easy lightness. Heaven never seals off all paths. Precious treasures of heaven and earth always exist. Since things are as they are, what use is there in brooding? I'll just keep cultivating the bloodshed art for now. A flicker of appreciation crossed Eryndra's eyes, and her tone softened. The bloodshed art refines the essence of blood and Kai. In this, young, robust men hold the advantage, so your age may actually turn from a liability into a boon. This art has a high upper limit. Focus on it for now with a steady heart. When the time is right, destiny's grace will find you. Kaelan mused, indeed, I've endured many drawbacks for this sake. It can't be helped. Speaking of which, in my blood fiend saber art, there's a supreme technique called Gods and Buddha's Scatter. It requires an absurd amount of blood. Fiend Kai, they say it can barely be used once at the third tier of the Profound Gate. Can I substitute that with this true Kai of mine? Based on your description of its quality, I might be able to manage a single stroke. A low grinding sound came from Eryndra's jaw as she unsheathed her long blade with casual ease. Her voice sharpened with rising excitement. I'll give you a real fight. Kaelan stepped back, a wary note creeping into his voice. Fighting you means instant destruction. Eryndra's excitement bled into her tone. Without tasting defeat, what's the point of cultivation? Draw your blade. Kaelan turned and ran, his boots scuffing the ground. You're still wounded. Another day, perhaps. Eryndra gave chase, sword thrust forward. Beating you is more than enough. A mocking note entered Kaelan's panting voice. I think you just want to hit me. Eryndra's voice carried indignant pride. Don't slander me. I, Eryndra, am an honorable person. Kaelan's shout rang across the courtyard. I'll fight back. A fierce grin flickered across Eryndra's face. Come on, let me see how much Chief Zhao is worth, daring to call me Moon. Kaelan skidded to a halt, his voice cracking with sudden resolve. If beating you lets me call you Moon, then I want to give it a try. Before the words faded, his right foot stomped the ground violently. A muffled boom erupted. The blue bricks of the courtyard splintered, debris flying. Kaelan's body spun, tendons and bones in his waist, and legs crackling in unison. Like a fully drawn great bow suddenly unleashing. He leaped up with his saber, the blade tearing through the night sky as he slashed downward. Blood, red saber light burst forth. The crescent moon of New Year's Eve was abruptly swallowed by blood light. The saber light descended from the heavens like a blood moon cleaving the sky. In the darkness, only a pair of blood-colored eyes hung in midair, godlike and demonic. Bloodlust filled the air gods and Buddha's scatter. Eryndra's pupils shrank to pinpricks. She had seen this strike before Hierarch Zhu had used it. But now, delivered by Kaelan, the aura of a blood god wielding a crescent moon to cleave the cosmos was even more ferocious than Alaric's by threefold. Her long sword thrust out without hesitation. Brilliant crimson clouds reflected across the sky. A setting sun and a blood moon hung together in the heavens, then vanished into silence the next moment. The violent clash of energies exploded, sending sand and stones flying in the courtyard. Kaelan hurtled backward, his spine crashing against the courtyard wall. The blue stone gave way with a thunderous roar, rubble cascading around him. He lay sprawled in the wreckage, a coppery tang flooding his throat. Agony ripped through him, as if his ribs had cracked, every sinew screaming. His Kai was utterly spent. He couldn't lift a finger. Looking up, he saw Eryndra leaning on her sword, blood blossoming across the fresh white robe at her lower abdomen. The old wound had torn open again. Eryndra watched him coughing and trembling against the wall, yet still laughing, and a trace of admiration flickered in her eyes. Originally her injury was trivial, but Kaelan's strike had far exceeded expectation. She had instinctively tensed her abdominal muscles to receive it. It was laughable. She had come here to heal, but instead aggravated the wound. Kaelan pushed against the rubble, struggling to prop himself up, then suddenly grinned, exhilarating. That's what makes a fight worthwhile. When your wound heals, let's do it again. Eryndra suppressed her surging blood and Kai, the urge rising to retort. You forced that ultimate technique, and now your Kai is so depleted you couldn't even beat a goose, and you asked. Till say again, but she didn't say it. Because even though that guy was limp all over, leaning against the brick pile like a tattered sack, his eyes were shockingly bright, brimming with the unbridled joy of battle. It wasn't bravado. It was genuine anticipation for the next fight. That kind of person was born to cleave mountains and rivers with his blade. Eryndra pursed her lips. I have a theory about the nature of your Kai. Kaelan raised his eyes to her. Her voice remained steady, analytical. Just now you simultaneously used your blood and body power in your Kai, and the two merged seamlessly. The compatibility is peerless. You can shift into any type of force at any time, whether internal or external. For now, it means you have an extra reserve of blood energy from the bloodshed art. Kaelan's eyes lit up. That's great. Eryndra's voice grew thoughtful. At deeper levels, it should work the other way. No matter what other cultivation you have, it can all be absorbed and integrated into this Kai. All rivers return to the sea, a grand, majestic vision. Kaelan nodded slightly. It was indeed so. It perfectly matched the mindset of Zyrax leaving a cultivation method for an illegitimate son. Whatever the child learned could be merged and embraced. And the idea of all rivers returning to the sea was also another layer of the imperial will. For the first time, a measure of respect arose in him for that father he had never met. Eryndra said no more, lazily turning to enter the house. Tonight we must rest properly. Now it's not me sheltering here to heal. I'm guarding you during your cultivation. Kaelan shuffled into the house step by step. Upon entering, he saw Eryndra applying medicine and bandaging the wound on her abdomen. Her movements were natural, and after a glance, he felt no need to avert his eyes. With just that gruesome wound on her belly, what could there be to see? Kaelan sat down on the edge of the bed, closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. Eryndra finished tying the bandage and sat cross-legged on a chair. Before long, both entered deep meditation. The night breeze outside the courtyard stilled, the broken stones ceased their shifting, even the blades of grass froze. Only the faintest sound of breathing remained between heaven and earth, inhale and exhale, gradually falling into the same rhythm. The night fell silent at last. Morning light filtered through the window lattice, casting several long, slanted shadows across the room. Kaelan sat cross-legged, brows tightly furrowed into a knot, veins bulging on his forehead. The force of the bloodshed art raged intensely, like countless red, hot iron wires scraping back and forth through his meridians. His muscles twitched spasmodically, and faint cracking sounds came from his bones. His breathing was heavy and erratic. A stifled groan leaked between his lips. The tearing pain clawed at his flesh, threatening to swallow him whole. From the depths of his dantian, a warm, dense flood of Kai surged upward. It poured through his meridians, a soothing balm against the roiling heat. Two primal forces waged a silent war within. His spine snapped straight, a rigid, defiant line. Then it buckled, crushed down as if by an unseen hand. Eryndra lay on the opposite couch, her eyes fixed on the figure across the room. In the martial world, many walked the bloodshed art's path. Few endured this trial. Most surrendered, allowing the baleful energy to hollow them into mindless instruments of slaughter. But this man, she saw him wrestle, his chest heaved. Every breath was a snarled challenge to the agony, a silent roar that seemed to dare the heavens. Strike harder. Do your worst. Footfalls echoed in the corridor. Eryndra's hand flew to her sword hilt. Chill light flickered in her gaze. A soft knock sounded, barely more than a brush of knuckles. A voice whispered through the wood. Boss, her fingers loosened from the weapon. She glanced at Kaelan, still trapped in that unseen battle, cold sweat tracing rivulets from his jaw to his knees. She rose, opened the door. A cook stood outside, balancing a wooden tray of coarse steamed buns, plain rice porridge, and pickled vegetables. Kitchen smoke swirled in with the crisp mountain air. The cook lifted his head, and his eyes bulged. Dawn light wreathed her in a gossamer halo, her heroic features and innate martial pride colliding into a presence that stole the breath. He ducked his head, pasting on an awkward grin. Elder sister, in-law, boss ordered breakfast last night, told me to add a portion for you. Eryndra's lips twitched, a vein pulsed at her temple. She said nothing, taking the tray. Thanks. The cook backed away, bowing, still mumbling. Elder sister, in-law is a celestial being. Boss is so blessed. She spun, kicked the door shut. The tray landed on the table with a solid thud. At that sound, Kaelan's eyes snapped open. The vicious snarl dissolved from his features, receding like a night shadow before the dawn. He blew out a long plume of turbid air. Then his familiar grin returned. Morning, you even brought food. I didn't know your breakfast tastes. Make do with this. Eryndra dropped onto her seat. She hooked a foot onto the next bench and lifted the congee bowl, drinking straight down. We're wanderers of the martial world. Fussy details are for city folk. Kaelan splashed water on his face, then settled opposite her. He studied her, a laugh escaping his throat. You're brimming with vitality, wounds all healed. Never serious. She tore into the cornbread, words muffled. The external cut was a shallow slit. Those wisps of sword Kai inside, after a night of circulation, they're mostly gone. 2-3 days more and I'll be whole. What's this talk of brimming with vitality? That strange phrasing. Zhao village dialect, you get the gist. He paused, his gaze growing distant. In time, you won't hear those words from me again. Eventually, I have to melt into the martial world. Eryndra thought of the slaughtered village, of a mother tongue that would never find another voice. Her tone fell. If I had arrived just one step sooner. Leave it, what's chewing over the past? He waved a hand, then his grin sharpened. Do you want me to hang my debt of gratitude around your neck every waking moment? She shot him a cold glare. I've yet to see a single shard of gratitude from you. When I saw you wounded yesterday, the first urge was to rise and kill Oren. What do you think drove that? You couldn't really believe I secretly pined for you, Eryndra, could you? Let others gossip. You're not taking it to heart. She choked, nearly spraying Kanji. Kaelan smoothly veered. By the way, I'm not familiar with those aristocratic clans. Brief me a little. For instance, the King Kui family. Why that name? Also, Eryndra frowned. Why not the King Kui family? I meant, are they inherited from the previous epoch? Unclear. The rise and fall of these clans predates the Great Xia. Dynasties shift, yet they remain. As for the Yu family's glory, if you're curious, corner Oren yourself. He'll be delighted to boast, though how much truth laces his words I cannot say. Would he even acknowledge me? She considered, a knuckle tapping the table's edge. Hard to say. Those clan heirs seem as warm and polished as jade, flawless in courtesy. But underneath, there's always a subtle detachment, a scrutiny that sets your teeth on edge. I sit second on the hidden dragon list, so they still treat me as someone of consequence. I can't say how the tale of that list looks through their eyes. Still, we're both etched into the chronicle of chaos. That should keep the door from slamming in your face. Kaelan nodded. Arrange a meeting when you have the chance. Eryndra's eyes lifted, surprise glinting. Why willingly suffer their cold indifference? He met her gaze, offering no explanation. That glance sent an unnameable prickle down her spine. She slapped her chopsticks down with a crisp crack. What are you staring at? We're not that familiar anyway. What's strange about getting things wrong? How's your recovery? Come, time for sparring. Kaelan almost laughed, almost cried. He let the remark about familiarity slide, seizing it would twist the mood into something he wasn't ready to face. He did want to spar, but his body was yet weak, and he worried her wound might reopen. So instead he asked, You said you'd teach me 3 aspects. What's the third? Eryndra's expression hardened. She rapped a knuckle on the table. How to listen to the wind and fix an enemy's location. How to sense external threats, and... Before the words finished, her wrist snapped. A bamboo chopstick shot from her hand. A piercing whistle tore the morning light shiaing. The air ripped open, a visible pale scar. Wood splinters danced, and the chopstick buried itself hilt. Deep in the door panel, 3 zhang distant. Its tail quivered with a high frequency hum, a tooth-grating buzz that filled the stillness. A few slivers of wood drifted down. Eryndra turned her head, her gaze locked on Kaelan. Strike down foes from afar, pursue the soul and claim the life. Do you want to learn? Thunk, a heavy bowstring's voice. The threes. Donebow hummed, its shockwave whipping dust into sideways gusts. The arrow screamed across the training field, a jagged, ear-shredding roar. The bullseye detonated, splinters sprayed. The thick target gaped with a bowl-sized hole, the frame groaning as if about to snap. But all color bled from Kaelan's face. Searing pain tore through his right shoulder. His arms spasmed and dropped, fingers curling into a claw. Sweat burst from his forehead, sheeting down his cheeks. A muffled groan escaped him. He cradled the shoulder and crouched, lips bloodless and trembling. The bandits at the field's edge stared, dumbstruck. The arrow's flight still echoed in their ears, while their boss huddled on the ground, hissing frozen breaths. Eryndra stood at the field's edge, arms folded, expression blank. A cold wind snapped the hem of her robe. Can you stop spasming? Her voice was hoarfrost. You overdrew last night. True Kai unrecovered, sinews and bones still weary. Then you go all out on a 3-stone bow, felt glorious, did it? Tore your shoulder clean apart with brute force. Does it still feel glorious? Kaelan's mouth twitched. Head bowed, he ground out 2 words through clenched teeth. Come rub. The bandits exchanged nervous glances. Not one dared move. Eryndra almost laughed at their cowardice. She strode over, grabbed his collar, and hoisted him. One arm, a man well over 100 jin, lifted like a chicken. He dangled, face twisted in pain. The training field fell dead silent. Every eye tracked the woman who carried the bandit chief in one hand, striding toward the chief's residence. Elder sister-in-law is mighty, someone shouted. Laughter rippled, long past time someone put boss in his place. Who's scared I was praising elder sister-in-law? Does boss dare breathe a word? What do you know? This is called pressing the stronghold. The stronghold chief is pressed so hard he doesn't dare squeak. He was dumped onto the bed with a grunt. Her expressionless face loomed. She pressed a palm onto his throbbing shoulder. His muscles jolted, cold sweat beaded anew. Her fingers kneaded with precise force, working through spasming knots. Waves of soreness sharpened into spikes of pain, then faded. He locked his jaw and swallowed every sound. Her wooden face turned. Explain. A pause. What madness drove you to go all out like that? His voice came thick. A bow is a lethal weapon for transcending tears in battle. Handled right, it can make plenty of people swallow their final regrets. I had some ideas, just couldn't resist. Her finger pressure increased. You have a definite target. Someone you currently can't handle. Do you need me to step in? He turned his head and met her gaze. Those eyes were placid, emotionless, yet he suddenly smiled. No need. Kaelan doesn't live off a woman's strength. Her willow brows shot up in fury, but he cut her off. Sister, you. Her hand froze. His voice dropped to a murmur. You came half to recuperate, and half out of guilt for not taking me as your disciple back then. You used healing as an excuse to teach me. Whether my wound's close or not, once you've imparted what you mean to, you'll leave. Silence stretched, then softly, perhaps, he sat up, face earnest. Their misunderstanding troubled you. I'm sorry. In my heart, Eryndra is like a teacher, like an elder sister, nothing more. I hope you'll keep teaching me. He was pleading for her to stay. She looked at his absurdly serious face and felt a laugh rising inside, but her voice came out flat. Like a teacher, like a sister. I'm 2 months younger than you. His jaw went slack, stunned. She patted his shoulder, rose, and walked to the door. Light steps, yet steady. The wooden door swung open. Cold wind rushed in, lifting strands of her hair. Rest well. Sharpening the axe won't delay the woodcutting. Above all, don't be impatient. He stared at her retreating back, mind still reeling. Breathless voices rang from outside. Elder sister, in-law. Elder sister, in-law. Captain Fang sent someone to reprimand us. The boss didn't pay New Year's respects on the first day. She had just reached the door. She stopped. Her eyes lifted to the messenger, bowing outside the gate. Her gaze was a frozen lake, calm and still. What's there to say? Your chief injured himself training. Are you all blind? He lies in bed, unable to move, and you expect him to run out and pay respects. Her voice wasn't loud, but each word drove down like an iron nail. The messenger stumbled back half a pace. Go back and tell your Captain Fang. True heroes of the martial world don't follow his bureaucratic rules. Stop brandishing a chicken feather as a commander's banner, nauseating. The moment the last word left her lips, an overwhelming chill radiated from her. The wind beyond the wall seemed to freeze. Bare branches ceased their swaying. Bandits and messenger alike stood petrified, silent as cicadas in winter. She flicked a glance at the messenger. Still here. The man scrambled away in utter panic. Silence reclaimed the courtyard, broken only by the mournful howl of the cold wind. The new year passed in a flash. The stronghold stirred to life again in the biting cold of early spring. Kaelan stood at the training grounds center, hands clasped behind his back. His fierce gaze swept over 300 or 400 bandits as they bellowed and drilled. Fists and feet sliced the air. Sweat splattered the still, cold ground steaming in faint white wisps. Eryndra walked the stronghold perimeter alone, slow, light steps. Eyes sharp as blades, inspecting each trap in turn. Wind swept past the stockade wall, carrying the smell of rust and raw soil. She halted before a pit, bristling with spikes thrusting skyward. Their cold gleam under the pale sun was the fangs of starving beasts. Her voice cut through the noise, not loud but absolute. Remove these spikes. A bandit burying spikes froze. Elder sister-in-law, a pit without spikes isn't a trap, just a place to squat and take a soft burst of force struck his chest. He flew backward, rolled twice, and came up with a mouthful of mud. She retracted her finger, like flicking a speck of dust. Without a glance, she pointed at the others, who shrank back, heads turtled. You lot. Dismantle every spike in every pit inside the stronghold. Lethal traps go outside the walls, near Mount Hinder, along the mountain paths. The more murderous they look, the better. Inside, only snares that can entangle an enemy to avoid harming our own. She paused. You can build fine mechanisms without spikes. A trigger that dumps freezing water over someone's head in this weather that strips a layer of skin. A pressure plate connected to a bowstring that snaps a vine net shut and hoists the target upside down. The cunning devices of this world are endless. Her gaze swept over them. If any of you comes up with a clever idea, there's a reward. Dirt and stones pattered down. A bandit pried out the first iron spike. Mottled with rust, it scraped violently against the wooden housing, screeching like a metallic living thing torn from flesh. Teeth on edge, the man's hand trembled. The spike clanged to the ground, dust puffing up. Throughout the stronghold, traps were dismantled. Ringing clanks of metal merged with the biting mountain wind into a bleak symphony. From a distance, Kaelan's voice cut through the din with flawless timing. Do as she says. Those 3 words fell. No one argued. It was no longer a question who truly ran this place. Lunchtime, they sat facing each other inside. Bowls and chopsticks clinked softly, steam from the food condensed into white mist in the spring chill. The aroma of meat and oil hung heavy in the silence. As the meal wound to its end, he finally spoke. I've had the room next door cleaned up. You'll stay there from now on. There's a bath barrel. Hot water will be brought in every night. Her cheek bulged with meat. Chewing paused for an instant. She raised her eyes. After swallowing, she arched a brow. Not afraid your men will laugh at you for having no domestic discipline. He didn't take the bait. Staring at the remaining broth in his bowl, his voice dropped low. I just want you to stay here longer without any mental burden. She glared. He raised both hands in surrender. Outside the window, a sparrow sang. Spring sunlight slanted through cracks in the wood. falling upon his upraised palms, light and shadow fragmented, trembling faintly. They said nothing more, but neither treated this separate rooms for the bandit chieftain's wife as a real rift. In a city inn, Oren sat by the window in an embroidered robe. A half-read book rested in his hand, pages quivering in the draught. Kaelan huddled in her sable, fur hat, face flushed from the cold wind. Second brother, Lynn Ferris, is coming. Fourth realm of the profound past, this doesn't look like he's just passing through. Oren turned a page, tone indifferent. You and I fully recovered half a month ago. The news would have spread by now. Whoever's coming can't be here for our business. Her eyes lit up. Then it can only be targeting Barrow Mountain's Kaelan. A fourth, stage profound past cultivator, contesting the last slot on the hidden dragon ranking that could be interesting. He glanced up. The stronghold houses Eryndra, fully healed and restored. Unless a grandmaster of the heaven and earth mortal chart descends, anyone who seeks trouble there is courting death. Her smile stayed bright. I understand the logic. But what if that wild girl from the mountains, as you call her, isn't there right now? Oren said nothing. He closed the book and set it down. This mission, he said evenly, is abandoned. Not a suggestion, an order. She stamped her foot and spun with a pout. So boring, her skirt brushed the threshold, raising fine motes of dust as she flounced away. Oren stared at the empty doorway, motionless for a long while. Beyond the window, street noise filtered through paper, muffled as if from another world, the stronghold training ground. High noon in spring. The clang of blades tore through the mountainside. A piercing ring echoed, startling crows from the woods. Black wings beat in a flurry. Kaelan skidded backward, boots grinding against gravel. Scorched black trails carved the earth. The acrid stench of friction mingled with bursting dust. He dropped into a deep bow stance and drove his right-hand saber into the ground. The tip plowed through soil and stone. Sparks spewed. With a harsh, grating shriek, it gouged a deep furrow. Every ounce of momentum discharged in a single motion. Sinews knotted on his bulging forearm, veins corded. The blade's hilt still quivered with residual hum. Ahead, Eryndra raised her longsword. Its tip caught the sunlight, crystallizing into a needle of cold brilliance. With surgical precision, she flicked it toward the pebble that shot out from his slide, metal-kissed stone. A sharp metallic ping scattered fine sparks into the air. The pebble veered away. Its lingering ring hung clear and sharp, like shards of jade clattering onto a plate. She sheathed her sword in one fluid motion, as effortless as brushing a fallen leaf from her sleeve. A spring breeze swept across the training grounds, carrying the first faint scent of budding grass and wild trees from the distant hills. They exchanged a glance. A quiet smile broke across both their faces.